gonna make it bang though.
I'll ride for my community. I'll die for my community. I'll ride for my community. I'll die for my community. Don't let them make you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Taz. And this evening, we're talking justice for Jason Fox. And tonight, I am more than blessed, more than appreciative to have his wonderful mother here, Pepper Fox. And Pepper, would you like to further introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Pepper Fox. I live in the greater Seattle area, and my 19-year-old son was murdered back in September by a group that he called friends for being gay.
And this is a tough one to unpack.
It's a lot.
I do know that the night that he originally disappeared, a text was sent out. After he did not arrive back home, let's start from there. What were your first steps?
I was called on. I was called on the 16th. Jason had been missing for 2 days, and his cousin, who is a few years older than me, said, "Get ready. Jason's missing. I think he's dead. I'm calling the police to file a report." And I said, "Why didn't you file it a few days ago?" And she said that they made her wait a 24-hour period.
But when you spoke to the police, what did they tell you?
When I spoke to the police, they said that that I said, "Is it 24 or 48 hours you have to wait before filing a report?" And they said, "No, that's a misconception. People get that wrong all the time. We take the report immediately, and if we had gotten a text message, seen a text message that said, if anything happens to me, I'm at 22 Yargans Road," he said, we would have acted on it immediately."
Now, the address that you brought up, and I'm glad you brought it up, is of great significance for the area that Jason went missing in. Would you like to explain what has previously happened at this residence so people have a better understanding of why he would have pointed that out?
It's a wedding venue. I'm not sure how much he knew, but with the research that I've done and people that have come to me asking for help, and looking at doing my own research, something's going on there at this wedding venue. It's 54 acres. It's in the middle of nowhere. And I've had kids ages like 15 to 22 come to me asking for help, saying that they went out there and they were partying. And one thing that the Ken Schreckler does, the property owner, he helps troubled youth, by having them work on the ranch. Well, the all 7 of these kids that came to me told me that the same story. I told them they needed to get together and they needed to go to the police, and they were too scared. But they said that they went out there and they were partying, and they were offered champagne. And after the
odd choice of drink for such young individuals.
Right. Well, how many kids in the country have ever tasted champagne before? Not very many, right?
I can't think of any, and I've lived in the country.
So you wouldn't know if it was roofied. You wouldn't know the difference in the taste.
As a grown woman at this point, I think maybe 3 times in my life I've had champagne. I couldn't even tell you if it was roofied. So I can't even imagine if a child could.
Right. I've never tasted champagne, and I'm 40 years old. and they're offered champagne, and they all said that after a little while they started feeling funny. It almost sounded like a date rape drug, or like a hallucinogenic um like sedative or something. And after they started feeling funny, Ken Streckler, the homeowner, would take them to a room in the house, because there's a lot of rooms in this house, right? And and they take him into a room, and then someone that they didn't know, a man, would come into the room and hand Ken money, and they said, well, it's hard for me to even believe it. It's not really rape because I didn't say no. And I'm like, that's the whole point of a date rape drug, is so you don't say no. And they said that the stranger handed Ken Streckler money, and then Ken Streckler left the room, and sexual things were done to them. And they all said the same thing about feeling like they felt like they were asleep for a little while, and then like came to, and they were like sober.
Mm-hmm.
And it was dark out, and the same scenario for all of them. They were in the car, or in a car, being pushed out on the side of the road in the middle of the dark, about a mile from town, to fend for themselves after they had been used. And one of the people told me that he'd been used over and over and over. And yeah.
And for those that are wondering why this has been able to continuously happen, there are a number of businesses registered to this address that don't add up. You can.
I'm in construction. I've been in construction for almost 20 years. And when I did a background check on Ken Streckler, I saw there was 22 different companies that were under his name that were gotten close to this, in these clumps of time, where you got like 3 businesses on the same date, and the start date and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
22 different companies. And like, when I went out to his property after the maid had talked to me, and I wanted to go out there before she cleaned up, I went running out there with a friend, and I also Facebook Live. It's on my Facebook. I Facebook Lived the thing. The whenever I went anywhere, I always Facebook Lived it, because I'm usually alone. Anyway, as I'm walking the property and whatnot, I there's no way that he didn't have the credentials or the equipment to be able to have Timber River Racing. He had a Chevy Love Up on blocks. He had Timber River Construction. I didn't see any construction tools out there. He had a Timber River, it was Timber River Concrete, and it's like he doesn't have a rock quarry. He had Timber River rock, and he didn't have a concrete machine. He didn't have a quarry for rocks. He didn't have the things that you usually need to run a successful business. And so he had all these different, and they were all LLCs, and that's the important part, is they're all LLCs, meaning their own separate entities that are given like a UBI or their own like social security number, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like if he wanted to get out a loan, he could basically get out 22 loans, one for each of the companies, right? So yeah, that's it seemed really off. It seemed really weird that like Timber River Electric, he doesn't even have the credentials to be an electric company. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Okay, and I know that there were a lot of LGBTQIA plus children and teens have reached out to you recently, and I know that they have expressed to you that there is a plausible connection between him and another individual, where it's like one is grooming the other to pass on to the other. Do you want to break that down?
I had a girl that I didn't recognize her, but she recognized me from years ago. So I used to live in this town. She came forward to me, and she says, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I said, "No. who are you? You know, and she said, remember on Jennifer, which is my ex-niece-in-law, Jason's cousin, who he was staying at, whose house he was staying at. She said, oh, I was the drunk girl that was always, drunk or high on her couch. And I'm like, oh. And there was another individual that was also involved, and that was JR, who was JR Volkman, who was a family friend for many years. And he has a tow company, a junkyard, on Highway 2. It's right outside of Newport. Who, he helps troubled youth also. And she told me, she confided in me, and she came forward to me, and she told me that when she was 12 years old, she wanted to go home after a birthday party, and JR offered her to take her home, and he made a pit stop, and he basically raped her, out in the woods, and he continuously did this to her from like 12 to 15 years old, right? And then he passed her over to Jennifer, who was, it seems like, grooming, because there was a lot of drunk young individuals over at her house where she was getting them drunk, getting them high, and having sex with them, and it would just make sense to me, with the information that I have gathered, that because the same group migrates from house to house to house. All three of these people have the same things in common. They have drugs. They never leave their properties. They all help troubled youth. And it seems like JR sleeps with them, and then Jennifer gets them loaded on drugs and drunk, and then passes them over to, because obviously they're ready by that time, and they're given to Ken for selling. Ken was really upset when all of this came out. He actually made a comment to someone in town at a store that was saying, what's going on at your property? And he said, I've been in this town 15 years, and I've been seen but not seen. And now my cover's blown. And it just makes sense, because someone quoted him that was actually someone quoted him online, and I know that this person was involved because later in the story, I was asked to change motel rooms at one point by the police, and I'm like, oh yeah, whatever, or motels altogether, and so instead of doing that, I moved my truck, and I got the room. I moved to the room next door, and about midnight there was this loud ruckus going on next door, and I heard familiar voices, and I look out there and I see Jennifer and this kid that had made the comment of seen but not seen online, and a few other people that I knew, that Jason also knew, and I could hear them right through the wall, and they started talking about that night. And later on, I confronted JJ. JJ is the one who had made that comment online, and I heard him distinctly say something. And then when he went to jail for a little bit, and he got out, and he confronted me online. He said, I hear you think I'm involved, and all he did was say, we grabbed the gun and we threw it in the river, and we came back 2 hours later and Jason was dead, and he blocked me immediately. And I got a call from his what would have been his mother-in-law, who I didn't tell anyone about my incident with JJ, and she calls me the next day, and she says, hey, I don't know what scared JJ, but he packed up everything in the middle of the night and he left. He moved an hour away to Coeur d'Alene. And I said, well, let him know, please, that let him know that just because he moved an hour away in another state, the state line is right there. I said, just because he moved to another state doesn't mean that he can run from this. And
now, I do know a lot of people have questions regarding, because a lot of people know that Jason did have a vehicle, and they're wondering why he didn't drive his vehicle that night, but his vehicle had been damaged, correct?
He had two different vehicles. One had been destroyed by his bullies, Riley and Matt, and he had just gotten his unemployment, which was $11,000, and so he spent 4,000 of that and bought a new car, very nice new car.
And the vehicle that had been destroyed, the original damage was like a brick through the windshield, correct?
Right, and it was out at JR's property. And when I first hit town, I went by there to see JR. He wouldn't look me in the eye, and he wasn't interested in looking at any of the pictures, because I just picked up pictures for the visual, and it just seemed really weird. And I looked over at the car, and the car was intact, all the doors, windows closed, windshield gone, I later on that day, I texted him and I said, "Hey, do you mind if I come out and look at his car? I want to see if I can find anything with his handwriting on it, or this or that, And he said, "Yeah, no, not a problem." Well, I contacted him 3 days later and said, "Hey, I'm coming up to look at the car," and never got a response. Well, I went ahead and went up. I went up there, and I was shocked when I got there. All of the doors were wide open on Jason's car. They stripped it. Yeah, like they went beyond stripping. They stripped it down to like the frame. Like, they broke things that didn't need to be broken. They were, I don't know if they were looking for something or what was going on, but they destroyed his vehicle. And there was everything that was inside the vehicle was strewn all over around the vehicle. And it just looked like a whirlwind went through there and just destroyed it, just threw everything everywhere. And they just, like I said, they destroyed things that didn't need to be destroyed. Or when you're pulling apart a vehicle, I mean, they deliberately broke things, and I was Facebook living it, and his son, who's 18 years old, actually owns the property, and I wasn't looking at my feed, and I didn't know that JR was actually watching my feed, and he was in his trailer on the property, and he was telling me to get the F off his property, and Dylan was chiming in, saying, "Hey, that's my property. You can be there as long as you want, Pepper. Just don't break anything, And anyways, we got he finally came out as I was like getting ready to leave, and we got into an argument about the vehicle and what the hell was going on, and this and that. And at that point, I'd already known, because his son, had asked him, and he said, my dad will never lie to me. I'll find out what you want to know. And I said, was JR involved? And he came back and he had told me that they told him that Jason was going to get roughed up, that he was going to get beat up, but he didn't know that he was going to, it backfired in his face, because he said, "I didn't expect him to die. I didn't know they were going to kill him," And JR, of course, is, when I confront JR with this, he totally denies it, and we're arguing and whatnot. And he sells drugs. He's been a registered informant for many years. Anyway, I as I'm getting in my truck, I look at him and I start yelling at him, and he says, "Hey, Pepper, you know what's better than selling drugs?" And I said, "What's that, JR?" And he said, "Selling people, because you can sell them over and over." And I said, "You're a bad person. I'm going to get you." And
Well, I do know the evening that Jason died, there was a woman there who also had her child there, and there was an emergency with her child.
there was actually 3 women there that are not being arrested, and there was actually 4 children there altogether. I have found out now that I have the discovery. I was unaware of all these other children there. So yeah. Well, at one point, because I said something online, because the police said I needed to, they were worried about my safety, and I got on Facebook because I was hot headed and I was angry, and I was like, if anyone wants to talk to me, I'm down here, the Spur Inn number 4, and people started knocking on my door. That's how I got the 7 came. Then there was a gal who was very pregnant, very high, and she was very, very nervous, and she said, I wanted to come down and give you, Jason's, phone, because she had one of Jason's old phones, and she said, these were my friends until this happened. After they killed Jason, I didn't hang out with them anymore. So I was just, she said I was just in the background, and I saw just about everything, and so I'm like, okay, what happened? And she said that when Jason arrived, he got jumped, and his hands were tied behind his back, and he was they took him into the shop and they started beating on him. And this one gal, Ashley Shelgren, had his Apple Watch and sent him on this wild Timbuktu ride, right? Oh, I'm over here, and he'd get there, and he'd say, oh no, I've moved already, I'm over here, and so he'd go to the next address she gave him, and so it was a wild goose chase. And then she finally said, hey, I'm at 22 Yargans Road, I'll be out here, I'm not going anywhere for the rest of the night, and so Jason went out there because he was leaving the next day to go to his brother's house until college started, which was in 2 weeks. And so Ashley obviously had been watching, because she wasn't watching her 1.5-year-old. And she, I guess after she got done watching Jason getting beat up and killed, or I don't know how much she saw, but she saw quite a bit of it, obviously, because there was enough time for her 1.5-year-old to get into her purse. She wasn't being watched, and ate her Suboxone. This 1.5-year-old ate heroin, basically. And she comes running out with the baby to the shop saying, we got to call 911. We got to call 911. And I kind of find it very interesting that, here she is, she's sending my kid to his death, but she's trying to save her own. That angers me, because she's a mother, and it's okay that she kills my kid because he's gay. But her child's worthy of living. That's how I see it. That's from my perspective. Of all these people have children, ages 1.5 to like 8, 9 years old. All of these people, they could have stopped at any time, and they didn't. And it was done viciously, and it was done out of pure rage and hate.
When 911 was called, excuse me, and first responders arrived, they did not find, nor were they alerted to Jason being on the property, correct?
Right. They did not know, because it was that night. Yeah. The thing is the police are denying they were out there. There's a eyewitness that so far she has been 100% with everything else that she's told me. She said she saw all 4 sheriff's cars go out to, that way. She was leaving that area, and she saw all 4 of them, this zoom, and she was only like maybe a block or 2 from the turnoff, and saw them turn off on Yargans, right? And see, the thing is, the protocol is with the police, is, if there's a child endangerment, especially if it's something to do with drugs, they search everyone's vehicles, they search the property, and they didn't. And if they had, then they would have found CL cleaning up Jason's blood in the shop. An eyewitness saw, and I didn't think much of it at first, because it was the first person that came up to me. this gal, she told me her name, but she's scared, and she said, I don't want my family hurt. She said, it was weird. She said, I was getting off work about 3 a.m. on 9/15, and she said, I hit that curve because town's on this one way loop, and she said that she saw Riley at the car wash power washing off his AR-15. And the car wash is right across the street from his house because he lived above a antique shop in town. And I timed, like, how long it would take me to get from 22 Yargins Road to, and it takes about 11 minutes. So while the police are coming to the property, he's already gotten into his vehicle with his gun, and he's off, and he's he's power washing it off while they're out there, probably getting Jason's blood off. I do believe her because of what the maid said, and also what the eyewitness said, and it sounds crazy. It as we're going down the rabbit hole, it'll get crazier and crazier. Okay, this pregnant girl that had come to me, the eyewitness, she said that that the four guys beat Jason, and they all took turns, and they were beating on him, and they raped him, and continuously beat on him. And she said, I guess they when they realized that that they killed him, he had gotten hit in the head quite a few times, that Riley at close range took his AR-15, which I found out from looking at Discovery and ATF, that's alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. That Riley's AR-15 is actually he has altered it so it's automatic, and so so when you press the trigger, just pow 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 until and they at close range, Riley unloaded 2 clips into Jason's face, so he was unrecognizable. And then she said that they propped him up, and all 4 of them took turns using Jason as target practice until his arms and legs fell off. Now, the reason why I believe her, I mean, it sounds crazy, but the reason why I believe her is after he was found, and they had, the police had taken his body, and it was in the autopsy in Spokane being done. The maid where I was, staying at, the motel I was staying at, she's walking by, and she says, "Oh, hey, I got a job this weekend." And I said, "Oh yeah, doing what?" Like why do I care? What you're doing, and she said, it's cleaning up your son's mess in the shop. And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, can I come with you? I know where, some of the stuff is that he says he's missing. I saw it with my own 2 eyes at JR's when I went to look at Jason's car, blah, blah, blah. And like, well, I'll let him know, but I don't think that's, and he wouldn't, she said no, it was no go. And anyway, I asked her, I said, "What does it look like? Please tell me what it looks like." And she was lied to by the homeowner. Ken Schreckler told her that the purple stuff everywhere was fingerprint, where they were fingerprinting and whatnot. And when she told me what color it was, I knew right away that is aluminol. Mm-hmm. Luminol is what's used. It doesn't matter if you spray stuff down with bleach. Luminol will show up DNA because you can't get rid of DNA. And I said, "Oh, she told me there's this purple sticky stuff everywhere." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Like what?" And she said, "Well, it's all over the bathtub, and it's all over the sinks." And she said, it's all over the floors, and she said, "They really fingerprinted." She said it's all over the cabinets, and it's all over the tools. She said it's all over the walls. She said it's all over everything. And she said, "What I don't understand is why would they fingerprint the ceiling?" And I said, I said, I don't know. I gotta go, and of course I went running into my room so she didn't see me like freaking out, but that sounds pretty accurate to me, to, the girl saying what she, the eyewitness. That would be appropriate for what she said, and then that would back up the girl seeing Riley at 3 a.m. on the 9:15 power washing off his gun. Because Jason's last message went out at 12:08 a.m.
And I do know that Jason's father, and I'm using this term very loosely, stepmother, I'm using this term very loosely, pressured you into having his remains cremated. But upon you arriving to sign paperwork and meet with the coroner, what the coroner said also gave credence to just how horrific and horrendous his last night on this earth was.
Well, it was the sheriff, the sheriff on the on 10-4. I was asked by the chief of police if I could meet him down at the sheriff's department. They wanted to talk to me, and I said okay. And I said I have some another information dump to give you guys. And I said I want copies of Jason's journal. I have Jason's journal that talks about the rape. And he's like okay. And so I go down there at 6, and I meet up with him, and we go through the first doors, and then he opens up the second doors, and it's like homecoming, sweet home Alabama, a homecoming from hell. Like I see this old man there, and all of a sudden, I get a flashback of, I remember this guy when he was young. I've been gone for like over 15 years, and it's just crazy to see all these people getting so gotten so old. And I'm like, Officer Blakesley. And he said, well, Sheriff now. And I'm like, oh, good to see you. And I look and I see Mike and Susan standing there, and I'm like, what the hell are they doing here? Because I hadn't seen them in years. And then I looked over and I saw these other two people I didn't know. I'm like, who are these people? And he said, those are ministers, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, why are there ministers here? And he's like, let's just go into our office. So I go into we all go into his office. Ministers, Mike, Susan on the other side of the room from me, of course. And he says, we think we found Jason. And Mike and Susan burst into tears, and they're being held by the ministers and this and that. Great show. And I'm like, wait, hold on a minute. You said you think? You wouldn't pull us down here if you didn't know. I said, he has tattoos and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, he's unidentifiable. And I'm like, what do you mean he's not? He's like, well, we can't. He has no skin. And I said, wait, hold on a minute. I said, okay, you got you're in biology class. You got a picture of a skeleton. You got a picture of a man with muscles, and then you have a naked man. And I said, which one's Jason? Remember, he's out in the cold, hard clay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's beginning of October, so it's still warm out and stuff. But anyway, he said, well, he's a mixture between 1 and 2. And I said, that's impossible. There's no way that our bodies, I said, he was a big boy. I said, there's no way that we could decompose that quickly. That he's like, well, let's just put it this way, that the autopsy was really easy for them to do because they didn't have to cut. They just had to go through, meaning like go through his rib cage, just put their hand through and check his organ. And it's like, that's impossible to me. That does not sound right to me. I mean, I'm not the smartest person in the world, but that doesn't sound right. And so I said, well, he has tattoos, and I said, well, he doesn't have any skin. And I'm like, okay, well, and he's like, do you have a hairbrush, toothbrush, that kind of stuff, because we need to do a DNA test. And then they did a DNA test, and they said, yes, it was Jason.
And when it was time for you to
cremate,
I know that you were forced into having cremated.
Not just by Mike, because Mike was blowing up my butt. As soon as Jason's body hit Padre County, I started getting phone calls from the funeral home, from the sheriff's department, and from Mike, saying, come on, hurry, go down there. And I'm like, can I have a minute? He just got back. Give me a minute. and he knows me well enough to know to just push, and I'll finally give in. And he pushed me. I said, fine, I'll go down there, And so I'm so glad I Facebook Lived it, and it's on my Facebook also. I'd heard from a lawyer friend of mine that I have a right. They cannot deny me the right to see my son's body. I made him. I get to see him. My kid. I made him. Mine. Right. I walk in, and I already Facebook Living, and I introduce myself, and he's like, oh, and he goes into his office, brings out the paperwork, and comes down. And before I can even finish my sentence, I'm saying, hey, I'd like to see Jason. He's like, nope, sorry, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. And I'm like, I made him. I want to see him. And he said, well, I'd like everyone to see him. I've been doing this for, over 30 years. And this is the worst I've ever seen. And I said, what do you mean the worst you've ever seen? Is this really the worst you've ever seen? He said, this is the worst I've ever seen. And he said, here, I've got, he said, here, I've got some hair for you. Because sometimes I was bad about finishing things all the way. And Jason had asked me when he lived with me about his baby book, and I hadn't finished it yet. And the one thing, I was going to give it to him that Christmas. And there's only one thing missing from it, and it was a lock of hair. And so I had asked the funeral director if he would please give me, a lock of his hair, which they did. But yeah, he did not allow me to see Jason.
Yes.
I got down. What I call small town, the good old boy connection, where they all stick together, because at the end of the conversation that we had 8 minutes later, he's telling me about how he's hunting buddies with the sheriff, So I felt like, in a way, and this is just my opinion, that he felt that he had the authority to crush and stomp on my civil rights, because I'm a grown woman, He took away my rights, and people say, oh, well, he was just trying to protect you. I don't need to be protected. I want to see what they did to my kid. I will always look for Jason.
I know that. Take your time. I want you to breathe. I want you to take a moment and just breathe and take your time. And just like we spoke the other night, I told you maybe it was better so that your last visual image in your mind wasn't that of Jason. I know that you are still collecting information and everything else. And just like I told you then, I'm going to tell you now. I know that in the near future, you will receive those pictures, but surround yourself with your favorite pictures of Jason before you do it, so that when you have to look down, you can look up and be surrounded with the wonderful, beautiful baby boy that you created. And I know that the coroner had connections with the sheriff, but he's not the only one involved in this situation that has connections with law enforcement and with attorneys. Because isn't there one young lady whose mother is like a legal secretary or something?
Ashley Shelgren's, she's actually the Padre County gravedigger. And she talks about in her Facebook page all the time about how obsessed she is with death and this and that. She loves burying bodies and stuff like this. Anyways, her mother is one of the secretaries for one of the judges for Padre County there in town.
And it also seems, isn't there another city that has connections to where Jason was murdered, where there are some suspicious cases in that city also?
Are you talking about Newport, or are you talking about Cusick?
Cusick.
Cusick? Cusick, it's weird. Jason's, it's weird. Okay, my friend and I just did some research, and Jennifer, Jason's cousin, the one he was staying with, Jennifer, she worked for the city of Cusick in the water. and she had gotten fired after working there a year because she was stealing money from people's water bills. Right? She got caught. Anyway, when I first hit town, she asked me if I could stop and give her husband, who is in Spokane, some money. And I'm like, I really don't want to see Chris. And I'm really glad that I did go to see Chris, give him some money. Because we had a conversation, and during that conversation, I decided I was going to do something different. I was going to try to be cool, calm, and collective, and try to be, as adult as I possibly could be, even though I wanted to just, what I usually do.
Completely understandable.
We'll talk when you wake up. Tied to a chair in the dark. But anyway, the thing is, so I thought, well, no, I don't get that much, good results that way. People usually don't tell me stuff after that happens. So let's try something different. So when I saw Chris, and I hadn't seen him in like 10 years, or 15 actually, I said, hey, Chris, do you mind getting in the truck for a minute? And just to chat with me for a minute. And he said, okay. And he gets into the truck, and I had asked this one creator. I couldn't find anyone. I was new to TikTok because it was Jason's name. New to TikTok, and I saw this really funny guy. His name's Jax. And he was kind of comedian type. And he's LGBT community, and he has a young son. Anyway, I asked him, could you, I need to find my son. Can you say something about my son, just real quick? He said, I'll leave you alone, and blah blah blah. And he said, sure. So he goes ahead and he does this little spiel, 60-second spiel on Jason, and it actually gets really good, hits on, his. I'm like, thank God, hopefully somebody will notice, because I'm trying to find my kid. Shoot, I just lost my train of thought.
You're fine. Take your time.
I'm showing him. Right. I'm showing him the video, right? And I say, and I show him a few other videos that I did, looking for Jason, his car, what he was wearing, this and that. And I said, yours and Jennifer's addiction caused this to happen. And he was still watching as I was flipping through, and I said, I know what Jason told me that you exposed him to. I said, but only you know what you exposed Jason to: the fights, the drugs, the suicide that you caught you and he grabbed you by the legs and lifted you up and screamed for help while you hurt his back. Yeah. You know everything that you exposed him to. I said, his only son is his youngest son, and is the youngest of the family. And I said, what would you do to me if everything that you exposed my child to, what would you do to me if I did all that and exposed your child to all of that? And he was completely stone cold sober when he got into the truck. Something must have clicked, because all of a sudden he just started wailing like a baby, and he wasn't making any sense, and he was like stuttering, and he was like, and he was saying all these weird stuff. And so I started recording him, and he shows me this I don't know where he got it or how he got it, but he showed me a picture of Jennifer at work, like maybe from a webcam or something, but she's coming up from underneath her desk, and she's naked except for she has a bra on, right? And it looks like she's reaching for like the telephone, and there's a naked man behind her that I didn't recognize until I met Ken Strickler when I went out to his property that day. It was Ken Strickler, right? And that was the same year, because we did research. Me and my friend did research. That was the same year. The same year that Jennifer got caught, fired, and arrested for what she was for the theft. He donated a fire truck to Cusick. Fire trucks cost about $100,000.
Yes, they're not cheap.
And if you don't have all the equipment for these 22 businesses you have,
how do you get a fire truck?
Maybe
stay under the radar.
Maybe loans through all those, doing white collar crime. I don't know. I would assume it sounds like sex money to me, but I might be wrong. You know, I've been wrong before, but that's what that's the first thing that popped in my head. Because if you don't have the credentials for all these LLC companies, unless you've got a bunch of loans out that equal to that much, which that's a lot of money to have, especially if you don't have.
That is,
Yeah.
because we're starting to come to the near the close. So I want to clear up some things because unfortunately, you were tossed in the midst of an unnecessary and horrific and chaotic beef online, and there were some false things said about you. So let's clear some things out.
Cat lady, yes, I used to really like her. I had a lot of respect for her until this happened.
Yeah. First of all, the woman whose name I will not say because I have zero respect for her, so I will not give her my energy, tried to insinuate that his father and his siblings had more love and more acceptance for him, and that was not true. You can confirm that they would repeatedly call him the F slur and talk down to him, correct?
Yeah.
They were not a support system to him at all. Also, in the city that Jason lived in and unfortunately went on to glory in, they are not very accepting of the LGBTQIA community. And there are a lot of parents who have sent their children to relatives outside of that city because they don't have any safe spaces. But I do know that part of your end goal, on top of getting justice for Jason, is to provide these children with a safe space. And would you like to talk about that safe space that you want to create for these children?
Jason's house. I want to buy 22 Yargans Road, or I want him to hand me the keys for his freedom. And because it's big enough, because there's a lot of outbuildings and whatnot, and it's like a 9-bedroom house, with plenty of room to keep building. You know, I want to make that the first safe place for LGBTQ plus, an alternative to the kids, you know, being abused at home and running off to these junkyards and getting drugged up and disappear or sold over and over again. I want to, because I know a little bit about a lot of stuff. I want to teach these kids that come in, you know, through that gate, and I want to teach them what we all should have learned in school. You know, how to balance a checkbook, how to change your oil, how to change your own tire. You know, give them the confidence to know that they don't need anybody else to make it, and so also give them that confidence so they don't end up in abusive relationships that they don't feel like they can get out of because they feel helpless. I want to give them the confidence, like the confidence I gave Jason. You know, because I feel responsible. You know, I feel like maybe I built him up too much, that I but you know, I meant everything I ever said to him. You know, he was so smart and he was so funny and he was so happy. You know,
I don't mean to cut you off. Hold on, Pepper. This is what we're not going to do.
So sorry.
You're not going to blame yourself for the heinous acts of evil people. You doing what the vast majority of us in the LGBTQIA plus community wished someone would do for us was not a bad thing. It was the best thing you could have ever done. So today, tomorrow, and the next day, you hold your head up and you puff your chest out and you take pride in the fact that not only did you accept your baby the way God created him and helped you create him, but you loved him and you gave him the confidence of 1,000,000 men. Don't you ever again feel bad. And if you do, you know that you can call me. But don't you feel bad and don't you put it on your shoulders what someone else did. They were despicable. And what you need to realize, you have an army behind you, beside you, and standing in front of you. And we have all agreed we are going to ride with you until justice serves, even if we have to pass the baton on to someone else because maybe we have transitioned, because a lot of us are not spring chickens, but we are here for the fight. Now, understand your tears, but let your tears be in celebration of your baby's life, not you taking on the guilt of some son of a bitches that don't deserve to even stand in Jason's shadow. They don't deserve to stand on any land that he's ever stepped foot on because he was way too good for them. And you take pride in that because that is who you created. That is who you built up. And you puff your chest out and go, you know what? This is my baby Jason. Ain't he the shit? That's what you hold on to. If somebody criticizes you, you go, you know what? Yeah, Jason is the shit. He is the shit. Jason, and what you're doing, you are about to change the world. You are about to show parents within the LGBTQIA plus community what the standard is, the bar to reach for. That bare minimum ain't enough. You accepted that he was born that way, and you accepted that love is love. And don't you down yourself for loving your baby. Don't you do it.
I don't understand how a parent could reject their child over who they love. I don't understand it. You know, this is all new to me. You know, I why would any parent reject their child? You know, I don't understand that. Well, you know, I understand, you know, what people have gone through, but like their parents, I just,
Baby, nobody understands them, and don't give them any time. Hold on, wait a minute.
it's heartbreaking. That I mean, like, you know.
Yes, for a moment, let me do what I did last night. I'm sorry, y'all. I need to talk to the little sister here, like y'all ain't here.
Uh-oh.
Don't worry about how other people feel. You have the beautiful heart. Like I just told you, you are the standard because you have shown people. When you were pregnant with Jason, you didn't care if he was going to be a boy or a girl or non-binary. You just wanted a healthy baby. And when you got that healthy baby, you loved him and nurtured him and built him up. And that is the basis of parenthood. So when your child comes to you and goes, you know what? I like girls, or I like boys, or I like both. It doesn't matter. They are still healthy. And you didn't care. You just wanted him to be healthy. And because somebody took your healthy baby boy, now you ready to roll up your sleeves and fight. And we are here to fight with you.
Thank you.
So don't worry about, don't let those piss poor ass parents that can't get it together take up any space in your head. Okay? There's enough that you are renting out in your head and your heart right now. Don't let them move in rent free. We have too much to do moving forward to be giving up space for free. And you know me, I will call you and keep you up all night until you laugh, until you fall asleep. You know I will. You know I will. But on that note, anyone watching, you feel free to take any screen grabs from this, repost it, have people come back, put your support behind Pepper. If you know anyone who knows anything about creating safe spaces, please reach out to her or to me. If you know anyone who is a counselor or can teach people, you know, how to properly deal with teens in the LGBTQIA plus community, please reach out, because a part of getting justice for Jason is to make sure there is no repeat of this. And let me say once again to you, Pepper, first of all, thank you. Thank you for trusting me enough to come on to allow me to help you tell your story. And once again, like I told you, I done adopted you. You can't get rid of me now. So you stuck with me. And thank you for your strength, your understanding, and your courage and your just courage. And I'm going to speak for all of the viewers because there's just been too many comments of support for me to just put them all up. But they are giving you a collective, big, long mama bear hug and telling you how much that they love you. So please know that you are not alone. And thank you all for tuning in. And as always, each one teach one, each one reach one. And until tomorrow, love you, Pepper, and get some sleep. Good night.
You have a good night.
Good night, everyone.